of the morning to you Pokemon trainers. Welcome. We are in North Carolina for the Pokemon VGC Charlotte Regionals, the 2018 format. Joe Brown, Arthur Marty Colby, and Tommy Cooling bringing you a quick little pre-show before our action starts. We have 2 days, over almost 200 players, I believe, registered in the Masters division, so we're very close. We have, more importantly, a lot of great talent and great Pokemon that we're going to see this weekend, and we got to get rid of the big wrestling elephant in the room. I know he's not an elephant, but that's how the phrase works. Intimidate Incineroar was finally released. Thank you to the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, for giving us those Gen 7 starter hidden abilities. And Marty, it's been a week pretty much since we got Intimidate Incineroar, and it is everywhere.
Yeah, it's been a week, but you certainly wouldn't think that with the amount of people that are bringing Incineroar here this week here in Charlotte. I'm excited to see it. It's a more Trick Room friendly Intimidator, and I think it fits on a lot of teams, and we saw it fit on a lot of teams even without the ability Intimidate. So getting that really great VGC ability, I think really changes the metagame entirely.
Yeah, we were playing a completely new format. Everyone loves to go to those new regionals at the beginning of the format, just to play with a metagame that's like almost completely underexplored. And that's exactly what this is right now, because we have not played with this Pokemon before, and it is such an impactful Pokemon. It will probably be almost certainly in top five uses this weekend, if not in like top 3 or even number 1, because it is that good. Fake Out, Intimidate, and the Fire typing are some of the most important utilities in the game. So to have them all into one Pokemon, it rivals the usefulness of something like Landorus. It's that good.
And I think what's so interesting with this format is just because Landorus and Incineroar both have Intimidate doesn't mean players aren't going to put both of them on that team. They're going to have Landorus and Incineroar and regular Gyarados. Like, they're just going to have all these Intimidate options. I think that's what opens it up to some more unconventional Pokemon that can really counter what Intimidate brings to the table.
Yeah, something I love about it is also along those lines, you're not forced to bring something like Landorus if you want to bring Intimidate. Like, the problem in the past was that everything compared to Landorus was just not as strong, right? If you wanted to bring Intimidate, you had to bring Landorus because the other Pokemon around it just weren't nearly as strong. You had to run stuff like Salamence or Gyarados when those lose their Intimidate ability on Mega Evolution, or you had to run something like Manectric, which is largely seen as a Mega that doesn't have the power of something like a Salamence or a Metagross, but the Intimidate ability is so important that you just run it anyway. So now that we have Intimidate Incineroar, you have the option to slap Incineroar on a team and not have to run your Landers. You can run like other flying types. You can run other fire. You have your fire type. That's the other thing. Having a fire type that you can slap on almost any team, we were really missing that because Heatran just hasn't been as strong this year. Metagross in particular has been a huge problem with it because of that Stomping Tantrum. You're almost forced to run something like a Shuckle Berry, even just take a Stomping Tantrum. At that point, it's like it's not a true counter anymore because you're taking a Stomping Tantrum unless you're just firing off a one-hit KO with something like an Overheat or a Flamethrower. The Metagross is just going to beat you in the end anyways.
So what type of Pokemon do you use? Like, there's a lot of Pokemon that really take advantage of their stats being lowered.
Yeah, and it's funny, you mentioned wrestling at the very beginning. I think people are wrestling with the idea, is there such thing as too much Intimidate on the team?
The answer is no.
Maybe I run Landorus, maybe I run Incineroar both on my team. And I think what's going to be important here, the trainers who thought that ahead of time are going to prepare to counter that. So you're going to see Milotic, you may see Bisharp, you may see things that are more unconventional like Empoleon
yes!
this week. And I know you're excited for that.
I've been preaching to everybody who listens that Empoleon is busted.
Yeah, it is the Defiant, the competitive ability. I think it's going to make a really strong presence here just to counter all the Intimidate that we're going to see. And I expect Milotic to have a really good showing this weekend.
Well, one team that we have seen throughout this VGC 2018 format that doesn't even need Incineroar on it has been this very popular Metagross Tapu Lele team. Zapdos, Landorus, Amoonguss. It has this whole core. It's been doing well at the international championships, obviously winning in Oceania. So just talking for some of our newer players, why that team building composition works. Like, when you're building a team, what are you looking for, and how does that popular team synergize so well?
I think the first place you look is just the fact that Metagross, to this point in the season, has probably been the best Pokemon in the format. It's the Pokemon that you could slap on, most teams. It's a Steel type, which a lot of teams want. Its power is nearly unrivaled in this format. Its typing, its bulk, everything is just so good about it. So you put the best Pokemon on a format on a team, and you just give it partners that let it win the game more often. You give it Zapdos for speed control. You can give stuff like a Moongus so you can redirect hits. You just put your Metagross in a position to win the game as many times as possible, and like all the partners let it do that. After Intimidate, it can take stuff like multiple Earthquakes from opposing Landorus. So we get into this whole war where you're just like you want your Metagross to be able to almost win the game on its own, and you just use the other Pokemon around it. Stuff like Tapu Lele has a really strong Psyche MZ. So what you can do is use your Tapu Lele to maybe take out a big threat that your Metagross has to deal with. That one-time huge C move with a Psychic Terrain is going to take out something, and if that's something that Metagross needs a little bit of help to beat, they're left with 3 Pokemon that maybe might not be able to take on Metagross now, and Metagross can kind of just steamroll over the rest of the team.
Yeah, I really like the Psychic Terrain support along with the Metagross by its side, because what we're going to see here, I think, is that Incineroar was already considered somewhat of a check to Metagross without the Intimidate, but bringing the Intimidate in now is going to make it more of a direct counter to that Metagross. So being able to stop something like Fake Out, maybe we see the Metagross opt for moves like Substitute to take advantage of that. I'm really interested to see how Incineroar changes the dynamic of that team. I don't think it's so strong that it will change it entirely, because that's a really strong team, but I do think you will see a little bit of tech checks here and there added to the team to be able to accommodate for that new ability.
Right, no matter how bad we wish for it, Landorus isn't going anywhere. Mega Metagross isn't going anywhere. But you talk about Mega Metagross being the best Pokemon in the format, and that's something that has really opened up in VGC 18. Obviously, we didn't have Megas in 17, and 14 to 15, 16 was Generation 6. So in Generation 7, there were some balance changes. Mega Kangaskhan, the second hit doesn't do as much. The speed tier is changed so that now when Pokemon Mega Evolve, they instantly get that speed buff. That might be the biggest factor is why Metagross is good again, because it doesn't have to protect its first turn Mega Evolving. So it's such an open format. You can use Manectric, Salamis. There's so many great Mega Pokemon right now that it really opens up team building options. Where before it's like, oh well, you have Kangaskhan and Salamence, and those are really your best options. Now there's at least at least more than a dozen viable Mega Pokemon you can use on any team.
Yep. I think one of the big things that kind of spurred Metagross into all this usage is actually the addition of Stomping Tantrum to its move pool. The ability to have the Ice, the Steel, and the Ground coverage on one Pokemon, they're all boosted by the Tough Claws, and because of that, it's able to have a near perfect coverage, and because of that, it's really, really hard to check. That's why things like Heatran, a lot of the fire types in the format just can't answer anymore. One of the best ghost types in the format is something like Aegislash and Gengar. Both of those are weak to Stomping Tantrum and are going to take a lot of damage, and if you're not careful, your Aegislash can get doubled into with a Stomping Tantrum that's going to do around half to it, and if anything else on the opposing team can do half your Aegislash, all of a sudden it's not a true Metagross answer anymore, and because of that, we kind of move into a format where we were playing to beat Metagross, right? And the other Megas kind of had to, keep Metagross in mind, and you had to tailor the rest of your teams to beat the Metagross. But now with Incineroar, we're kind of moving a little bit away from that. Metagross, I still think, is the best Mega in this format. I don't think it's even close. But Incineroar definitely opens up the teams, because the teams can now slow down Metagross a lot better, because part of the problem was that the best Intimidate Pokemon in the format was Landorus, right? And because of that, the clear body ability, you had to be very, very careful about when you brought Landorus in. Also, Ice Punch can just knock out Landorus, so you had to be very, very careful about when you brought in Landorus. And as soon as you did, if it was not faster, you likely wanted to switch out, because you really did not want to take that Ice Punch. Now with Incineroar almost certainly takes a hit from Stomping Tantrum unless the crits. So you have something that you can switch in. You buy turns with Fake Out as well. You get the Intimidate. You get the Flare Blitz, which does, even at -1, as long as you have a bit of investment, you can pick up a KO on that Metagross, that really, really bulky Pokemon. So it just opens up teams to maybe explore other Mega Evolutions now.
So Marty, since Mega Metagross is great, but what are other Megas that you think are potentially viable in this format?
I think with the presence of potentially having to face something like a double Intimidate archetype here, what we're going to see this weekend, I think something like a Kangaskhan that gets access to moves where it can boost. I think we're gonna see some of the more popular, like a Feeny Kangaskhan combo with the swagger to be able to get boost onto
that
the
would be cool.
Kangaskhan.
That would be cool.
I'm interested to see how those tweaks are going to happen. I still think Metagross is incredibly strong, not just for its really great move pool, but the fact that the counters really aren't there. The counters are I guess you would say non-meta Pokemon. We saw Jamie Boyd bringing the Persian as his answer. Not exactly something that we're seeing a lot of. Not seeing a lot of Alola Persian out there. I think definitely Incineroar, the elephant in the room, gets a little bit better, but you can't lead the Incineroar into the Metagross because of that cleared body.
Well, what about let's say special attacking megas, because that I've always really been keen on special attacking megas like Manectric and Charizard Y and Venusaur. So I think they really benefit because they don't care how many Intimidators my opponent has. If I have Charizard Y, I'm not worried about my attack being dropped because I'm using special attack. So I think that the Intimidate buff that just came out last week is really going to help all of these special attacking mega Pokemon.
Yeah, and I think Mega Manectric is probably the one that makes the most sense there. With the potential double Intimidate, or just Intimidate in general, trainers are going to have to figure out a way to pivot into more advantageous board positions. And so having a fast Pokemon, base 135 speed Manectric, outpacing the Coco tier, that's going to allow them to get fast Volt switches, be able to get into a better board position, maybe switch something out that just got intimidated, Volt switch, and then bring that Pokemon right back in. So I expect Manectric to see a little bump in usage based on that.
Yeah. Something we talked about at the beginning of the season was the pairing of Gardevoir and Incineroar, and because Metagross still stakes a pretty big claim on the format, it's been really, really hard for Gardevoir to kind of function in this format so far. But I do think the introduction of Intimidate and Incineroar opens it up a little bit so that maybe as the format progresses and we're able to, kind of force Metagross to kind of wane down on usage a little bit if we continue to beat it as hard as we're trying to. If that does happen, I think Gardevoir might be able to, pop up a little bit in usage because the Dark and the Fire typing are phenomenal partners for that Gardevoir. It hits stuff like the Steel types that has such a problem with. It hits the Ghost types, and because of that, you get the Intimidate, so you protect Gardevoir on its weaker defensive side, the physical side, and you also get Fake Out, so it can do its speed control options like Trick Room, and you can just go into Trick Room and then fire off big hybrid voices. Obviously, the nerf to Pixelate going down in power definitely hurts Gardevoir a little bit, but Incineroar is probably the best partner that it's ever had, so I still think there's a little bit of hope for it, but it's also competing for slots on teams with the Alolan Guardians, the Tapus, so it's in a little bit of a weird spot, but I definitely think this opens up the potential for Gardevoir to maybe see a little bit more use, since it did see a little bit at the very, very beginning of the format, but eventually Metagross just kind of yeah.
I think I would love to see Mega Gardevoir come back into the spotlight. I loved using it in 2014. Of course, regular Gardevoir won Worlds in 2014, not Mega. It was Mega Gyarados, but it had such flexibility to it. But one Mega Pokemon we didn't mention was Mega Steelix, and that's how we're going to transition into Wolf Glake and all of the phenomenal players that we have here in Charlotte this weekend. Wolf Glake, Ashton Cox, we have national champions, international champions, multiple regional champions like Drew Novak. There's a lot of really top tier talent in Charlotte. So who are some players you're excited to see?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to see Ashton Cox. Every time I watch him on stream, he's bringing something new that maybe you thought in the back of your head, maybe that would work in theory, but he takes those theories and he takes them to regionals, and not only just takes them there, but he does really, really well with them. So I'm interested to see how he shakes up the metagame here this weekend.
There's actually a pair of players I'm really interested to look at. Both Michael Anzano and Toller Webb. Both of those are players that we haven't really seen too much at tournaments. They are, these giants of the past that used to do so well at these tournaments. But, as they've gotten older, they've started, attending less tournaments, which, it happens. But now we get to see them both trying very, very hard. I think is, one of the first regionals in this format. They haven't really played too much of the format, but they are two phenomenal players. Jive Time or Michael qualifying for multiple world championships, Toller winning a national, winning worlds in the senior division. So both are phenomenal players, and aren't also players that necessarily carry the most standard teams as well. They like to innovate a little bit. Michael Anzano often team building with very famous Conan Thompson. So combination of those two, and then Toller, of course, is just a phenomenal team builder himself. So I'm really interested to see what those two have to bring to the table.
I have some people from overall history, but more recent is in the last couple of months of how they've been performing in this format that I'm really excited for. I believe Colin Heyer is with us this weekend,
Yep.
and he did great. He did great in Dallas. He had a cool Reuniclus team. I think him and Drew Nowak were having the same composition. So he's a great team builder and a phenomenal player. Always world top 8 player. Definitely has won regionals before. So and then recently, Alvin Hidayat is here, and he won the St. Louis regionals back in February. And then another player I want to see make that big step is Chup Across the Fourth. He is, of course, a New York-based player. We know him very well. In Dallas, he was 1 win away from being regional champion, and he's gotten multiple top 4s at regionals. He finally made the finals in Dallas, and he was so close. Had no time left in Game 3, so he had no chance of coming back. But Chup is such a consistent player that knows his type of game and plays it to perfection a lot of times, as long as he gets the right plays or makes the right predictions. And I want to see if he can finally break that barrier and claim his first regional championship.
Yeah, I definitely think he's capable. Players like him, players like Justin Kruba, who's also made multiple regionals finals but has come up just short. I think they're definitely posed to try and push for a win somewhere like here. I think both of them have done at least a decent amount of prep. I know that Chepa was scrambling a little bit last minute to try and find a team, but he's the kind of player that can just pick up just a good team and play it to the best of his ability, and it's turned out very, very favorable results from in the past. So he just needs to push himself a little bit over the edge. Same with Justin Kruba.
All right, give me a prediction. A Pokemon that you think is going to do well. Don't give me Landorus. Don't say it in Incineroar. Like some Pokemon that if you were trying to not necessarily counter the meta, but if you were a player here in Charlotte, what's a Pokemon that you think we're going to see today that will will make players worried when they go against it?
So I'm going to steal the easy one. I'm sorry, guys, but I think Milotic. I think Milotic is the anti-Incineroar, the anti-Landorus, and a lot of players are going to be forced to not even bring that Pokemon just to have a chance at not boosting Milotic. I think there's a couple different items you can see on the Milotic. Tommy, I know we were talking about this, potentially a Wikiberry Milotic for more survivability. I like the Adrenaline Orb Milotic, and I think the Adrenaline Orb Milotic really goes all in on your opponent having to bring Intimidate. So for the teams that did bring Incineroar and Landorus, they're going to really hate facing Milotic with Adrenaline Orb at the end of the day.
This one actually might seem very, very out there based on what's transpired, but I actually think Kartana is a really, really good call for this event.
Yes, I love Kartana.
Yeah, despite the fact that Intimidate and Incineroar is a Pokemon that is very, very bad for Kartana, we're getting to the point now that because Intimidate and Incineroar is put onto teams as a check to Kartana, and a lot of teams can otherwise forget about it. Kartana paired with something like that Milotic becomes very, very hard to deal with, because if they have to use that Incineroar to handle the Kartana, and you have something partner like a Milotic, a Gastrodon, a Lander, something that can threaten a one-hit KO on that very, very bulky Incineroar, you get into a spot where Kartana is probably one of the easiest Pokemon to snowball with, and by that I mean you pick up a knockout, you get the Beast Boost, and all of a sudden Kartana has a raised attack. It can just take another knockout, get up to +2, and it can just run through games there if it has any sort of momentum. So if you're able to find turns where you can make sure that Incineroar cannot touch that Kartana, I think it's an absolutely phenomenal play for this tournament. I think a lot of people are kind of forgetting about it, and one of the faster Pokemon in the format, one of the only Pokemon that outspeeds it, Tapu Koko and Metagross. Tapu Koko obviously can do a lot of damage with the Gigavolt Havoc, but Metagross really can't do that much. All of its moves only do around 30% to Kartana. So if you're pairing it with something like your own Intimidate Incineroar, all of a sudden it's not KOing Kartana for a bunch of turns, and that's all Kartana needs. Kartana just needs turns to either set up or just fire off damage, because it's doing so much with that massive attack stat.
Well, my my pick is on the opposite end of the speed spectrum with Araquanid. He's a powerful water-type Pokemon. Obviously, water has always been strong defensively, but in this format, there's great offense with it. Hydro Vortex is, Watarium Z, arguably one of the best options we even saw in 2017 for that Z move. You can see Ludicolo now. You can see Kingdra. So many Pokemon with Hydro Vortex. I think Araquanid takes a lot of advantage of that. Even though it's weak to Tapu Koko, it does have a very strong special defense stat, and I think it works well against some of those common cores that we've been seeing develop early on in the format. So that would be my choice for my sleeper pick of doing well here in Charlotte. But I really do hope we have a lot of competitive and defiant and just Pokemon that are like, okay, bring your Landorus, Incineroar, Salamence, Gyarados team. Like, I'm ready. I have that Adrenaline Orb Melodic. But that's going to do it for our pre-show. Thank you so much for joining us here. I've had a lot of fun. When we get back, we're going to have round one coverage. If you are interested, Battle Factory is providing the stream for the trading card game. So you can type in chat !TCG, and you can go over there. They have a great round one set up. We will get round one ready for you. This is Battle Factory VGC.